We survived, and our kids, we're here.
So this is it, the last time that People magazine will sit down with President Barack Obama and First Lady Michelle Obama at the White House.
To sit down with them at the White House for their final print interview as President and First Lady, it was just great to sort of see the arc of this historic journey.
We talked about what is going to be next for them, how they're feeling about the transition to the next president, and what life has been like for them living in the White House for the last 8 years.
They talked to us about everything from watching their girls grow up in that fishbowl, but also the relationship that the president developed with his mother-in-law, and what Michelle really thinks of his dad jokes.
Try to cut those off.
She's been cutting off.
That's
between
why the kids
Michelle
didn't want to come
and
to the turkey
Malia and
party.
Sasha.
It was your jokes that drove them away.
Here it is, People at the White House with the Obamas, the final interview. Here we are in the White House.
The Red Room.
Just a little bit longer. Mrs. Obama, you famously said last summer, I wake up every morning
in a house that was built by slaves, and I watch my daughters, two beautiful black young women, head off to school, waving goodbye to their father, the President of the United States.
Did you have that thought in your mind on the day you moved in?
Oh, no, that's too deep. No, you're moving in. The day you're moving in, you're frantic. You're trying to figure out where are the bathrooms and what does this door lead to? I mean, the chaotic nature of the transition for the family, I mean, it's smooth, but at the same time, it's very surreal. And you don't have time to reflect or think about the meaning or the magnitude of what you're doing until months after you've lived in that house. So maybe that thought happened by the summer. Maybe it was summertime I started, when they were actually out on the lawn playing. But it's a whirlwind coming into this life from a relative state of normalcy.
When that symbolism hit you, it must have been a very powerful moment for you.
Yeah. I mean, there are so many surreal, powerful moments. Watching my mother transition into this house, knowing where she comes from a working class, even poorer than working class upbringing, to seeing her standing on the Truman balcony and representing this country as the first grandmother. I mean, for me, those moments are just as surreal as watching the girls go through it, because her life was vastly different than anything I could have imagined, let alone what we've experienced here with her in the White House.
My first interview with Michelle in 2007, her mom was there, and we'd included her in our photo shoot that day with the girls. So People magazine has always had a kind of special relationship with Marion Robinson.
How has that experience living with your mother-in-law? Has
Yeah,
it bonded
right.
you in a way that you didn't expect?
I love my mother-in-law. First of all, she protects me from Michelle. So if Michelle's mad at me or something, she'll be like, he's a nice boy, stop it. And thanks, Mom. But we were already very, very close. Where she was invaluable was providing continuity and perspective for our girls. Because as great a mom as Michelle is, and I try to do my best as a dad, to have that intergenerational relationship, for them to be with their grandma the same way they were on 74th and Euclid, in the South Shore neighborhood where her mom's house. And where Michelle grew up, and to know that even though you're in this different environment, there's a continuity there, and it was also fun to see her discover things, because as Michelle said, she grew up in a much more restricted time and place, and I think for a lot of African Americans of a certain generation, and they didn't allow themselves always to dream big about what they might experience. And sometimes Michelle's mom's instinct is to, well, I shouldn't do that, you know. And so Michelle would be like, well, we're going to Rome and the Vatican to meet the Pope. Well, okay. And suddenly she's there and she's looking at the Sistine Chapel and she's having an audience with, you know, the Holy See, and it's magical for her, and she is loving it. So in some ways, you also get a sense of how much progress we've made through her eyes and through the experiences that she's having.
During this administration, there was a huge vegetable garden planted. During this administration, Girl Scouts were sleeping on the South Lawn. There was hip-hop dancing. The White House has been so much fun with the two of them in it.
I think one of the most enduring legacies of the Obama presidency is that the President and First Lady went out of their way to make this high office, the highest of offices, truly accessible to every American and every American child. So while it's always been a cliche, anybody can grow up to be president, I think that they actually put faces to that.
I've been here for many outside-the-box activities, including sleeping on the South Lawn with the Girl Scouts. You've cleared out the furniture and had hip-hop classes in these rooms. Was it a conscious decision that you were going to make the White House fun, accessible in some way that it hadn't been before? And what was the one idea that was brought to you that you finally said, no, that's too crazy, we're not doing that?
Yeah, I've done a lot of stuff, so I'm not sure that there,
that there have been any limits to your craziness?
No, it's probably something I can't even talk about. But yeah, it was a conscious effort. I mean, we've talked about wanting this to open this house up as wide as possible, and to make sure that folks feel like this is their home, folks who normally wouldn't gain access to these walls. You know, it's important for young people, in particular our kids of all backgrounds, of every race and every socioeconomic background, to feel like they have a place in the nation's house. And to do that, you have to do things that make them feel comfortable as well. And if it's hip-hop dancing, well, let's do it, you know. If it's a sleepover on the South Lawn with the Girl Scouts, then let's do it. Let's give it a try. Let's breathe some life into this place. And it also helps that we have kids, you know. I mean, we think about what activities they would love to see here.
We know
what kids want to see.
Our girls want to do.
Yeah.
And it's helped get them to be willing to go to some of the things with us.
A few things.
A few things.
Only a few things.
As time went on, they were all like,
You noticed this year you barely saw them, right?
Yeah. But
that's what teenagers do.
No, I think that's right. Early on, there was this notion that if you break traditions and do things a different way, that somehow the dignity of the office or the reverence in which this is held somehow is changed, and we never bought into that.
Hi, President Obama and Michelle. It's Seb Lay from Brooklyn. Are you going to have a big party before you leave office? If so, can I come?
Sedley, we are going to have a big party before we leave office, but I'll be honest with you, it's going to be after your bedtime. It's going to be kind of a grown-up party, but if you want to come and see some of the Christmas decorations, we'll see if we can be in touch.
The President and Mrs. Obama have always been really relaxed and open, and so while they've always been very careful about guarding Sasha and Malia's privacy, they're also proud parents who can't help themselves but tell funny stories about the girls or get weepy about thinking about them going off to college.
They're both very, very proud of their daughters, Sasha and Malia. They feel like, despite the incredible, strange life that the girls must have had these past 8 years, that they have really succeeded in giving them some normalcy and stability and discipline, that they really believe that both of their daughters are great kids and now great young women. Will your daughters miss living here, or are you are they really ready for some more normalcy than this place provides?
Well, look, they're ready to get out, just out from their parents' house. The fact that their parents' house is the White House may add to it. But yeah, Malia's, she's going off to college. She's a grown woman. And
I don't know about that.
you know, well,
still a
legally,
baby.
she's still our baby.
Okay.
But Sasha, is on her way, and I think there's a sentimentality about this place that they've had so many amazing experiences, and the people here, the staff, are part of the family. I think it is different for them than for most kids in that when they leave, they won't be able to come back home in a lot of ways. And I know Malia's spoken about that, that maybe she regrets the fact that she won't have that home base in the same way.
And her room that she
And her
loved. They
room.
love their rooms,
Yeah.
and
But,
they've made memories in there. So
yeah.
that's over with.
But they're look, they're ready to
Yeah,
they're ready to get out of the nest.
yeah.
We don't think they're ready, but they certainly
They
think they
think
are
they
ready.
are.
Yeah.
Now, for 8 years, you, as a twosome, have lived under an intense pressure that few people can understand. What effect did that have on your marriage?
Yeah, it's definitely brought us closer. I mean, Barack talks about this all the time. I mean, before we moved here, he spent most of our marriage, particularly with young kids, commuting in some way, shape, or form. When he was state senator, we stayed in Chicago, and he commuted back and forth from Springfield in Illinois. Then he became a U.S. senator. Because I had a profession, we stayed in Chicago. He commuted back and forth. So it wasn't until we moved to the White House that we were together 7 days a week, that we could have dinner together, that he had time to coach the girls' teams and, go to all the events. Yes, the job, carries its stresses for sure. I always say that nobody knows what it feels like to wake up and look at the morning paper and know that every headline, good or bad, is your responsibility. Wherever it's happening in the world, there is a weightiness, there is a heaviness to that no other person, even in the administration, really understands. So there's that, and when you feel that burden, you really have to fall back on the normalcy and the love of your family. I think probably some of the best moments for Barack is when he could come up on that elevator, come to the second floor, sit down at the dinner table, and have no one care about anything he does, at all. I mean, literally. Just talked over, talked around. He'd be the last, oh, by the way, Dad, oh yeah, what did you do today? They're usually getting up and leaving by the time
it gets to me.
Just like,
I did have an interesting conversation with Prime Minister
Right.
so-and-so. I got to go do my homework. Sorry.
But that is a grounding, experience. And our travel together, I mean, I wish we could have done more. I mean, there was a lot of divide and conquer. I could travel when the girls were on vacation. But the trips that we did take as a family are ones that we'll remember for the rest of our lives. And they're trips that you don't take, they're not normal family vacations. And those experiences have definitely brought us together in ways that we wouldn't have if we weren't here.
Well, and I also think that watching Michelle as First Lady has just increased, my awe and respect for her. Because in some ways she had to adapt to both a life that she might not have chosen for herself, but also there's no blueprint for being First Lady. And to see her and her team be able to shape the culture and have such an impact on our military families and on health and wellness, and be at once really impactful on policy, but also fun you know, it's fun when you see your spouse shine, and she's shone.
Hi, President Obama and Mrs. Obama. My name is Jacob, and I'm 5 years old, and I want to know who tells more jokes.
Oh gosh, the president tells more bad jokes.
I will say this, Jacob. Michelle is actually funnier than me, mainly because she teases me, but I can't tease her.
I think that's fair.
So she makes a lot of fun of my ears.
Oh, they're so big,
She talks about how gray my hair has become.
so white.
She talks about how slow I talk.
Oh God, he's slow.
I can't say anything about her because she gets mad.
Nope, you can't.
So I guess she's funnier.
When we were going to the White House to interview the president and first lady, I was so curious how they felt about the last election. You know, nobody had fought harder and more vocally for Hillary Clinton than Michelle Obama had.
Felt like you went out on an emotional limb, really, in this fall campaign. What was an election night like for you?
I went to bed.
Yes, she did.
I did. You know, I tend not to, you know, I don't watch debates. I don't like to watch the political discourse. I never have. I barely did with him. You know, it just, you know, once you do what you can do, you know, then you rest easy. It was in the hands of the American people. I think anything that I felt about the election, I said. And you know, I stand by. This is our democracy, and this is how it works. And so we are ready to work with the next administration and make sure that they are as successful as they can be, because that's what's best for this country.
I think it's worth noting that, you know, Mrs. Obama's mantra through the campaign was, when they go low, we go high. I think they've stayed high. And that's, I think, how they want history to remember them and the closure of their administration.
Look, I think that, as I've said subsequent to the election, there are deep differences in vision between ourselves and the incoming administration, but ultimately we're all on the same team.
Seeing the two of you come to the White House 8 years ago, you know, it was a symbol of just how far we've come as a culture. Then during the election and since the election, there has been so much misogyny and racism and bigotry in the cultural discourse. A lot of people feel like we've taken a huge step back. Do you feel like we've taken a step back?
Look, people always ask, you always seem so calm. And I tell people, part of it's being born in Hawaii. The weather's really good. You can always take a plunge into the ocean, so that'll chill you out. But also, I'm somebody who never believes the hype when things are going good and doesn't despair when things don't work out your way. The truth of the matter is that when I got elected, there was still racism and misogyny and anti-gay sentiment in America. What it signified was that for the majority of Americans, we had made enormous progress. I think that in the wake of this election, those same elements are still there, but it doesn't negate all the progress that's been made. But this is a big, complicated country. It always has been. History doesn't move in a straight line. It zigs and zags, and it goes backwards and forwards. And culture is a complicated thing. It's organic, and so you can never just say, all right, we're finished with that. That's kind of done. Now let's move on to the next thing. The battle to be vigilant on behalf of kindness and courtesy and tolerance and fairness and equality. That's a day-to-day thing that each of us are responsible for. And I remain hugely optimistic about the trend lines, partly because our kids and their generation, and you meet with them, and you talk to Malia and Sasha, the idea that you discriminate against somebody because they had a different sexual orientation, it's crazy to them.
Yeah.
And I should note, just so that this doesn't look like it's select sample, I've gone to college campuses and met with college Republicans, and they think that would be crazy too. It's not just a partisan issue, and so that generation right behind us, and I believe each successive generation, as long as we're doing our job of being good models for it, they're going to move this country forward in a better direction.
Proudest moment, or what the future holds for the Obama family?
Ooh, there's so many proud moments. I mean, I could say one, we survived, and our kids, we're here.
Our kids aren't crazy.
Our kids aren't crazy.
There's a headline.
There's that. Our kids aren't crazy. But all the work that I know that my team has done on the initiatives. I mean, when I came in, we talked about not wanting to just do symbolic things, that we wanted to move the needle on the issues that we took on. And I think that we can say that we have on every single issue, whether it's getting more attention around the plight of our military families and rallying the nation around it. We helped change the culture around how our kids eat and how we move. We're seeing college graduation rates and high school graduation rates go up. And we're gonna, if you talk about the future, we're gonna keep tackling those issues. We're gonna rest a second. We're gonna take a breather. As I told all of our staff here, it's time for us to tap out for a second. People need time to refresh and to reflect. I mean, this is what these interviews are saying. What we haven't had time to do is reflect on this. And before you can really, push off hard on the next part of the journey of your life, you've got to kind of see what just happened and understand it and know how it's affected you. And we're going to do that. And we have to be very conscious about doing that, because there are already calls and requests to come and speak and travel and do things, and if we're not careful, we can be just as busy as we are this week in a month from now. So I want him to sleep, and want to travel a little bit just for fun. You think?
Absolutely.
Do you expect to be maybe a little bit more of an activist, ex-president, now that we have this uncertain future agenda?
I would have been active no matter what happened in the election, because I'm only 55 years old, and me puttering around the house, doing Sudoku, as Michelle puts it, would not be good. I would drive.
We'd all be unhappy.
Yes. So, a couple things I'd point out. Number one, in terms of pride. I am serious about how proud I am of my daughters, and they are just really good people, separate and apart from them being my kids. And I'm admittedly biased, but if you talk to people who have met them or know them and are a little less biased, I think they'll say that they're kind, smart, thoughtful kids. That treat everybody with respect, and that's something you always worry about. I could not be prouder of my wife, as I already said. I think she has been extraordinary in this job, even as she's also held our family together and made it work so well. I could not be prouder of my team. Everybody here worked really hard and did a good job.
This time, I will say I thought that the president seemed weary in some way. He seemed more soulful than I've seen him in the past, and I think you did see the toll of the election. And I also noticed a fierceness to Mrs. Obama's talk about her husband.
Well, I have to say, because I don't want to leave this interview without saying how proud I am of my husband. Because all that he just said is because of his leadership and the example that he set, not just as a president, but as a human being, as a father. He has been a role model to millions of people from all backgrounds, and no one can dispute that. You know, I don't care what party you belong to. When you think of father, when you think of a good husband, somebody with strong values, all the things that people say they admire most in people and want in a leader, Barack Obama has been that and more. Smart, still the smartest person in the room, and the country is better for it as a result of him.
And excellent dad jokes, I think.
Oh, God. Well, then there's that.
But she actually
Try to cut those off.
She's
some.
been cutting off
That's
between
why the kids
Michelle
didn't want to come to
and
the turkey
Malia and
party.
Sasha.
It was your jokes that drove them away.
You know, but you saw my nephews at the turkey.
They were adorable.
And they loved my jokes.
They were told to laugh.
The great thing about a people interview is you can sit down with the president and you can talk about the big issues, you know, but we also look at them as human beings, and because it's people, they feel comfortable talking about what it has been like to be married in the White House and what it has been like to raise 2 daughters in the White House.
We do peel back the layer to the essence of the person. What are they like as parents? What are they like as husband and wife? What are they like as people? That just everyday living with them is something that we could uniquely do. And because of the relationship with them, I think they feel comfortable telling us that story. So they've been really generous with their kind of personal lives and People magazine, and that's been a privilege.